Okay, now in this tutorial what we're going to be doing is combining focus stacking with Y panning. So what we're going to be doing is using the X-axis to capture a complete depth of field and the Y-axis to pan along and capture the entire core sample. So we're just going to pick up right where we left off. We're going to use the same lens, and all we're going to do is decrease the overall aperture, and then what that's going to do is give us smaller focal planes. And then we're going to stitch together each of those focal planes, which is just going to yield a higher resolution result. But this is only, at this magnification, it's only going to give you about 10% added resolution or clarity, I suppose you could say, in the sample. This stuff only really matters when you apply it to higher magnification work. But what we'll do is we'll just jump right in and get started. What we're going to do is power on the StackShot device. And what we'll do is we'll just sort of, we'll bring the system just to the center so that the top camera can capture what we're doing. And then what we're going to do is we're going to turn on our camera. Once again, that's going to automatically open up our EOS utility. Now, remember last time we used an aperture of f4. We could also use an aperture of f8 in order to expand our depth of field, but in this case we're going to keep the aperture really small just for really high clarity image. So f2.8. Again, if you want, you could just open up the live view shoot so we can see what we're doing, and we'll just turn the camera on to an automatic mode, allowing us to see what we can see. Okay, so keeping consistent with what we were doing the last time with our y-axis, which is to capture the entire core sample, we don't actually need to change a lot of the settings. We know that our steps, we're going to take 8 individual images to use to stitch together. So we're going to keep that as 8, but one thing we are going to do is just move our camera down to the left side of the core sample. And this time, since we are capturing a depth of field, it's not a bad idea to add a scale bar. This is just going to increase the depth a little bit, so let's just add the scale bar up there in the upper left-hand corner. And now what we're going to do is change our axes over. So I'm just going to capture a video of this so you can actually see it from a different light. But here, what we're going to do is change from Y-axis to our X-axis. And now what we're going to do is use the up arrow to move the camera closer to the sample until everything just starts to go out of focus. And then we're going to pull it back through the sample until everything just starts to go out of focus. And what we're going to do is, with this magnification, we don't need to take a whole lot of images, so let's just capture 10 individual photographs. So now we have a start and an end. We have our Z-stack completely set. And our Y-axis is still consistent with 8 steps, but one thing we need to do is reset the start and the end position. So we have select the start position, so we're going to hit set, and now what we're going to do is move the camera system down to the end of the core. That's going to be our end position, so we're going to hit set for end. And now what we're going to do is link the axes together. So we're going to hit the Y-axis, the Z-axis, and it's going to take us to a menu where it shows that we're going to sync together 2 axes. So here, one thing we're going to do is hit change settings, just to go back from the beginning. And we're going to hit, do you want to link your axes together? We do. We want to link the X and the Y. Okay, we'll start with the X-axis. Does the X-axis step once before moving on, or complete the entire stack? In this case, we want a complete stack of images before moving on, so we're going to have it step once. Complete an entire stack. Now that we're on the Y-axis, we want this to capture one image and then move on and capture another stack. So this is just going to step once. And we don't want to use the Z-axis, not yet. That'll be the next tutorial video. So we're going to hit no, and now we're all ready to go. So to move on, all you have to do is press the start button, but before we do that, we're going to head over to the computer and again get our camera settings correct. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're just going to turn our camera over back to the manual mode. Again, the settings are going to be very similar. The only thing is it's going to be slightly brighter because we are using a smaller aperture. But again, I think the quality is still going to be pretty good. It's not going to be that much brighter. So what we'll do is we'll close our live preview, we'll open up a quick preview, we're on manual mode, so we have, again, our exposure 1/200, Our aperture is f2.8, ISO is 100. So let's just fire a test shot real quick. Oh, use my mouse here and see what we see. Again, a little brighter, not too much brighter, but it's actually a great quality photo. So we're going to leave that the way it is. We're going to go back to our folder. So this is the tutorial, video tutorials, MacroCore, images. Now I save that to core scanning, so what I'll do is I'll go in later and, or actually that went somewhere else, but what we want is this XY scanning folder. Press OK. So we don't actually need to delete it, that went somewhere else on my computer, but we won't worry about it. So now we have a fresh folder that's going to go in here. And one of the things we're going to do now is walk on over to the stack shot, and we're going to press start, and that's going to start the process. So we'll press start, and now the system is going to start integrating focus stacking with wide panning. So it's going to stabilize, and now what's going to happen is it's going to start to take a series of photographs starting from deep within the core and then move up through the sample. Okay, so the system has now captured all of our data, so it's going to go right back to its starting position. If you have another sample, you can swap it out and put another one on there. And now all of the remaining work that we have left to do is going to be handled on the computer. So one thing we want to do now is navigate to our video tutorials folder. So essentially the folder where we just saved all of our photographs. So that's in this folder here, Macropod MacroCore images. And then we want to go to the XY scanning function and find that folder. So here's all of the image data. Now, the first thing you want to do is just separate out the first batch of photos. And that's because sometimes, depending on the shutter output settings on the controller, it will take one less or one more photo than the rest of the batch. So there's going to be 11 or 12 photos in each of these images, but this one might have a different number. So if you just count the images where the blue scale bar is, you can see just by, actually we'll just move the screen so you only see those images here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And all of the other images, you can see that there's actually 12. So there's 11 and then one more down here, which is 12. And that's going to be consistent all the way throughout. So the first thing you want to do is just create a new folder for those first 11 images. And we'll just call that one first. And we'll take that first batch, drag it over to that folder there. And now what we can do is we know that there is 12 photos per frame. So here you can see the camera moved between image 24 and image 25. That pattern is further over to the left, and every 12 photos the camera's going to have moved a little bit further to the right to create the panoramic. So instead of creating a whole bunch of folders automatically or manually, there's an automatic way to do it. And that's by navigating to the folder axe icon on your desktop. Now this is pre-installed on your computer, but in case it's not, you can just download this software from the internet. So what you're going to do is select your folder that you want to separate out. So we're going to go back and just find that directory one more time. So video tutorials, MacroCore, images, XY. So now that we're in XY, we want to click on the entire folder. Press OK. And one thing we'll do is we'll just move our folder titled first to the XY scanning. So now you can see it's out of there. It's going to be up here. It's not going to conflict with separating out the rest of the images in this folder. And again, what we could do is just kind of change it so that it displays 12 images. So now what's actually happening is you're seeing each row is a focus stack, and and every time you go to row 2, you're on a different frame or field of view. Now that you're on row 3, you're on a different field of view, and so on down until we complete the edge of the core. So that way it's just easier to look at. But now what you can do, we've got that folder selected, and what we're going to do is click on by amount. So how many files do you want per folder? We want 12 files per folder because that's how many images there were per frame. And once you're there, you can also select the destination folder. So we're just going to select the destination as the main folder, which is the XY scanning, where we move that first folder to. Press OK. And that is where everything's going to be stored. So we're going to press split. You'll start to see the directory clear. We'll go back to XY scanning, and now you can see that we have all of our images separated out into subfolders. And we'll go ahead and just make this consistent. We'll call it folder 0. That way it's our first image. So now each folder represents a frame, and each frame represents a collection of 11 or 12 individual images to capture depth of field. So the next step is to navigate to our stacking software, which is Zerine Stacker. And rather than stitching together individual, opened up two windows, close that one out. Rather than stacking it one by one, what we can do is actually perform a batch function. So we're going to click on batch, show batch dialog, and we're going to take all of these folders, so folder 0 through folder 8. There we go. And we're going to drag those into the file area. And then we want to save those output images, so we can either save in the same designated folders or we can save in a designated folder. So we'll go back to the folder that we've been using, which is just sort of the main directory. So back to video tutorials, control core, images, and XY scanning, and we'll save it right into this folder. That way we don't need to grab them later on. So we're here. Click save, and now we want to add our task, so we're going to align and stack all PMax, and press OK, and then we're going to save this batch to queue, and then from here one thing we can do is just run all batches, and now it's going to automatically move through and focus stack these images. So we can actually close this window here, and we'll make this large, that way you can see how the software will work. Okay, so when the batch is complete, it's going to display this window. So the batch execution is completed. You're going to press OK, and now what you can do is close Zerine Stacker. And now what you're left with are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 total frames. So basically you have 9 frames, just as very similar to as we had in just the panoramic instructional video, but the difference is that each final frame here has been focus stacked, which means that it's going to generate a sharper image overall. So what we're going to do is open up Photoshop, and similar to the panoramic we processed before, we're going to select those 9 images and merge them together. And then what we'll do is just sort of compare results of a non-focus stacked image versus a focus stacked image. And you can really evaluate whether or not well, basically which method you'd like to use to capture your data. So for some samples where efficiency is key, but resolution isn't necessarily required, I'd say it's okay to just do panoramic imaging. Where you can be less efficient, but you need really high details or really high detail for a particular core sample, then you might want to use this method. So we're going to go back to automate, go down to photo merge, and we're going to select reposition, browse to our folder. So we'll go back to XY scanning. We're going to select those 9 final images, press OK, and OK, and now Photoshop is going to merge those images together. Okay, so now all of those images are merged together. And we can do the same sort of processing that we did before just to straighten everything up. So first thing we're going to do is just sort of crop the image just to make sure that we have no exterior borders here. We just have basically just the core, just the information. Okay, so there's our image, and similar to before, we can also make subtle adjustments to the contrast. So first thing, we're going to select on the layers and merge them together, which rasterizes the file. And then we're going to go to Image, Adjustments, and we can go to Levels. we're going to do is just make everything that's dark just a little bit darker, and everything light that's just a little bit lighter. We're going to go to image adjustments again. Similar, we're going to take our curves. Again, just increase the contrast just a little bit more. And finally, we can do just again a little Smart Sharpen, which is just very subtle. You click Smart Sharpen, make sure the amount is under 40%, and then change your radius to mid-range and noise reduction to about 40%, which really just smooths out the entire image. Okay, so now what we're going to do is just save it. We're just going to save it as a JPEG, just like we did the last file. And we'll call this one XY panoramic, just to differentiate from the other. So this is a panoramic that we used focus stacking on in order to capture a complete depth of field. So we'll save that, and then we'll close Photoshop, and let's open, let's wait till that finishes. Save changes, nope. Okay, so let's now let's open up each file, and let's compare the differences. So we're gonna open with just something straightforward, so photos, and we'll navigate to the other panoramic, and we'll open with photos. Okay, let's move this up. Whoop. Don't want to make that large. Oh, here we go. We just do a side by side. Okay, so we have scale bar on the left, core on the right. This is just standard panoramic. This is focus stacked. And the first thing we'll do is just start to take a look at the resolution. So this is just a regular photograph. Again, resolution is still pretty high. We can look at some details here. It looks like there's a bit of rust, maybe some iron oxide there. There's your pore space, but you can start to see that in the pore space, we can't actually capture the back side to the point where that information is in focus. And also, as we move down core, you can see over here we're starting to lose a little bit of focus just due to variations in how level everything was. And here again, we're starting to get a little fuzzy. We've got some resolution loss, but overall, it's still a pretty great image. And this is why this is the recommended use, because you still have great detail, but it's not going to be as good as this image over here on the left. So again, let's just find that same area. This is a focus stacked photo, a little close there. Let's go to the same size. So you can see here, even this grain, this dark grain, you can see how much crisper the image detail is on the left versus the right. So again, like I said before, it's about a 10% resolution gain. We can guarantee that everything in this photograph is in focus. So we can go back to that pore space. Here's that pore, and we can go back to the pore space over here. You can see how the backside of that pore is completely in focus in the focus stacked image on the left, and it is out of focus on the focus stacked image on the right. And that's basically going to be the difference between focus stacking and not focus stacking. So overall, pretty marginal advantage. However, what's really great is you do have that capability. But now what I'm going to show you is how to get a really highly detailed photograph using XYZ panning and focus stacking. So that's going to be followed up on in the next tutorial video. So stay tuned for that one, and look forward to helping you there. Anyways, thanks for watching, and thanks for choosing Macroscopic Solutions.